Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the SimNFL show. Real talk about fake sports. I am your host and commissioner. You can call me Pierce. Today we are covering all of the Week 11 action from the Pro Sim over at SimSN. If you're unfamiliar, come check us out on the website or on Discord. We would love to have you. So on today's show, we're going to be covering all of the stats and summaries from the Week 11 games, culminating in my choices for the players of the week. We'll do a quick injury update, check the standings and the draft order. And then our feature tonight is a little bit of SimNFL history. We're going to look back at teams' performance over the years, particularly at the playoff setup, see who's set to make some history this year, who is new to the dance for the first time, or is in line to be. Obviously, a lot of football still left to be played, but we'll look at some storylines for this year in relation to Sim history. And then, of course, we will wrap everything up with our preview for next week's games. So, let's go ahead and dive in. It was a very close game between the Steelers and the Commanders in the long-awaited Morrison QB battle, with the Steelers coming up just short of their upset attempt. This game was 3-3 in the second quarter when Robert Morris of the Steelers was intercepted by Lucio Escarcega, and he returned it to the Pittsburgh 13-yard line. A couple of plays later, Morrison hit Charles Brown for a 5-yard touchdown and the early Washington lead. Pittsburgh responded with a 73-yard drive, mostly runs, but then they set up a great play action on third down. Morris hitting Alex Williams III for a 21-yard touchdown in the play action to tie it at 10. Later, Stephen Tabbert broke away for a 60-yard run, but Jerome Morrison was picked off by Gomez Rodriguez at the Pittsburgh 6-yard line to maintain the tie for now. Pittsburgh went 3-and-out, and then Covarrubias returned the ensuing punt all the way to the Steelers' 25-yard line, which ultimately led to a Tabbert touchdown run from 2 yards out, giving Washington another lead, this time at 17-10. Pittsburgh then drove into Washington territory, but another Morris interception ended that drive and the half. First drive of the third quarter, though, Pittsburgh was back in action, going 71 yards in 9 plays. That ended with a touchdown run from fullback Telvin Acuna to tie the game back up at 17. But the Commanders responded immediately with Morrison finding Randy Wright, tight end, for a 38-yard gain, setting up a touchdown pass to Tabbert for a 6-yard. Tabbert's second touchdown of the game. Washington back on top 24-17 at that point. In the fourth quarter, Pittsburgh drove to the Washington 16-yard line, got a field goal. The next drive got into Washington territory but ended with a fumble, and then they went to the Washington 17-yard line, but that also ended in a field goal. So 3 strong drives but ended with 6 points and a turnover, leaving the Steelers just short. And then Washington had the ball with about a minute to go after a big first down. Looked like they could run out the clock, but going for the win, Morrison threw an interception on a 2nd and 6, giving the Steelers the ball back with one final chance. 3 plays got them to the Washington 47-yard line, which is the exact spot they would have needed to get to trigger the Sim to kick a 65-yard field goal attempt. But unfortunately, they ran out of time and no attempt was made, and the Commanders escaped with a 1-point victory. Tabbert, again, 2 touchdowns, 169 total yards from scrimmage for the Commanders. Danny Kipnis, fullback for the Steelers, had a great game, 26 touches, 165 yards. Ultimately, the Commanders held on just in time and were able to escape with the 1-point victory. Another game that got close at the very end was between the Jaguars and the Seahawks. Seahawks opened things up early. John Woodward running for a 40-yard run early in the first quarter, setting himself up for a 2-yard touchdown later in that drive for the early Seahawks lead. They were leading 10-6 in the second quarter when Jeremiah West found tight end Taylor Allen for a big 37-yard gain. 2 plays later, McGee had his own rushing touchdown from 4 yards out, made it 17-6. And then on the first play of the Jaguars' next drive, Matt Howard was intercepted, returned it to the Jacksonville 25, led to another short McGee touchdown run, and Seattle was up by 18 points at that time in the game. Leading into the half, Jacksonville drove down to the Seattle 36-yard line. In the final minute, Jake Bolden had a great catch and run of 29 yards, but then he fumbled away the ball. It was recovered by cornerback Mike Hargreaves, and Jacksonville got no points and had to go into halftime down 24-6. On their first, but Jaguars kept at it. They forced a fumble on the Seahawks' first possession of the second half. So Jacksonville ran it 6 times to gain those last 20 yards. Ryan Peterson got a touchdown from 7 yards out. It was 24-13. Unfortunately, later in the third quarter, Peterson would be carted off with an ankle injury, and he is expected to miss significant time. So the Jaguars had to finish the game without him. But on that same drive after the injury, Howard hit his tight end, Jin Zhang, for a 28-yard gain. Ultimately, they got a field goal off of that drive, making it 24-16, technically within striking distance. We go to the fourth quarter. A Jeremiah West interception gave Jacksonville a golden opportunity from the Seattle side of the field, but 2 runs from backup running back Bobby Davis went absolutely nowhere, and then Howard got sacked by Brandon Schroeder. That ended that drive in a punt. But the Jacksonville Jaguars would get one more chance after forcing a punt late in the game. They got the ball at the Seattle 48-yard line with 2:31 to go. Howard hit Jake Bolden for a 16-yard completion, but then a crucial holding penalty cost them 10 yards. And that proved to be the difference because 3 more completions by Howard got the ball all the way to the Seahawk 10-yard line. So that would have been a touchdown, and they could have had a 2-point conversion attempt to tie it. But because of the penalty, they were on the 10-yard line with 1 second left, ran 1 play, but were unable to get into the end zone. So the comeback attempt fell short. Seattle escapes with the 8-point win. Clayton McGee held to just 54 yards, but did have a couple of big touchdowns. Matt Howard, 263 yards with 1 pick for him in the Jaguars' defeat. Another very close game, this time between division opponents in the NFC North, with the Lions and Vikings going head-to-head. Christian Sinnock threw an interception on the third play of the game, trying to find the deep ball, but instead was picked off by Mike Presley. Detroit would drive to the Minnesota 47-yard line, but they would go for it on 4th and 3, and Tanner Lake got stuffed, and so they gave the ball back over to the Vikings. Third play after the turnover on downs, Sinnock threw his second interception, again on a deep ball, this time to Robert Smith. Detroit again drove into Viking territory. This time they got to the 41-yard line before punting on 4th and 5. So for all that back and forth, no points until late in the first. Minnesota was able to string together a couple of third down conversions to get a drive going. Then Sinnock hit wide receiver George Boone for a 26-yard touchdown, and the Vikings had the first points of the game. Second quarter again, Sinnock found Boone for another big gain. That led to a 20-yard field goal and a 10-point lead. And then it was stayed that way all until late in the third quarter when the Vikings were driving. Sinnock threw another interception, his third of the game. That set Detroit up nicely. Tanner Lake had a big 28-yard run on that drive. And then Randall Hansen found Thomas Bullock for a 25-yard touchdown pass. That made it 10-7, Vikings still leading at the top of the fourth quarter. With under 6 minutes to go, though, Tanner Lake broke off another big run for the Lions, 44 yards. And ultimately, that drive ended with Randall Hansen finding tight end Frank Moore for a 2-yard touchdown. Lions took the lead for the first time, did miss the extra point, though, so it was 13-10. Vikings took over. Gratterall run for a 40-yard run. Then on 3rd and 6, Sinnock found wide receiver Adrian Daniels for a 19-yard gain. Looked like the Vikings could make a push for a tying field goal or even a game-winning touchdown. But with 2:04 to go, Gratterall fumbled the ball, was recovered by Detroit, and they got a single first down, which was enough to basically run out the clock and preserve the win. So big day from Tanner Lake, 10 carries, 100 yards, leading the Lions to victory. Also great day for Robert Smith, broke up a couple of passes and had 2 of Sinnock's 3 interceptions. Sinnock did have a great day connecting with George Boone, 11 catches for Boone, 138 yards and a touchdown, but it was not enough as the Lions sneak away with the win. In a very close game between two AFC playoff hopefuls, the Browns beat the Raiders 23-20. Browns scored on their opening drive with a rare deep pass from James Rivera to John Morey for a 41-yard touchdown. Vegas went 3 and out, and then Rivera picked up again, hit tight end Stephen Ehlers for a 25-yard gain, George Lovejoy for 12. But that drive ended with a Matthew Kano sack. I apologize. So that killed any forward momentum. The Browns were still in range for a 38-yard field goal. So they had a 10-0 early lead. It was 10-3 in the second quarter when Vegas put together their best drive of the game. They went 89 yards in 12 plays, and James Hickson capped it off with a 29-yard touchdown pass to Andrew Richards, tying things up at 10. Before the half, Vegas would get a 32-yard field goal to take the lead. Browns would get their own chance, but Abel Chapa would miss from 40 yards out. So the Raiders went into halftime with the slim lead, 13-10. In the third quarter, Chapa redeemed himself from 35 yards out to tie it. Then Vegas drove to the Cleveland 43-yard line in response before Hickson threw an interception to Bryce Torres to end that drive. Cleveland would punt, but then Hickson would throw a second interception also to Torres. 2 plays later, Rivera found John Morey for another long touchdown, this one from 44 yards out, which would give the Browns the lead. It was 20-13 at that point. Into the fourth quarter we go, and there was a crazy sequence of plays. Cleveland with the ball had a 20-yard gain that was wiped out by an illegal man downfield penalty. On the next play, Rivera threw a pick. James Hickson immediately connected with Andrew Richards for a 20-yard pass, but then on an attempted screen on the next play, threw an interception to defensive end Brian Lutie. So third pick of the game, this one to a lineman, and just like that, the ball was back in the Browns' hands. But Vegas got a stop and kept at it with 6:11 remaining. Vegas capped off another drive with a Hickson to James Blank 29-yard touchdown, tying the score at 20. Cleveland went 3 and out. Vegas back to business, drives down to the Browns' 27-yard line into field goal range before Hickson threw his 4th interception of the half to strong safety Ken Miller with under 2 to go. Browns took over. James Rivera hit George Lovejoy for a 20-yard gain in the final minutes. Another short pass set up Abel Chapa for a 51-yard attempt with 7 seconds to go, which he nailed, giving the Browns the last-second victory right at the end of regulation. So, big day for Bryce Torres with those 2 picks and 3 pass breakups as well. John Morey, 5 catches, 103 yards, and a pair of touchdowns. Big day for James Blank as well for 167 yards. But Hickson with those 4 second-half interceptions really sinking the Raiders and handing the Browns a last-second victory. There was a wild interconference game between the Falcons and the Chargers. Falcons ultimately coming out on top in this one. Final score was 41-34. Chargers would actually start things off scoring on their first possession. James Carter rushing for a 44-yard gain and then a 14-yard touchdown to open up the scoring. His next drive, he had another big run, this one a 27-yard gain, setting up a short field goal and a 10-0 lead. In the second quarter, it was Aguilera with the big run, 31 yards, then passing to tight end Raymond Sanchez for an 18-yard gain. and then a 9-yard touchdown run from Aguilera, leading 17-3 were the Chargers at that point. That lasted through halftime. Padilla picked up early in the second half with a 50-yard run on the Falcons' first drive. That led to a Michael Fulmer 5-yard touchdown run. They went for 2 but missed it, so the Chargers' lead was 17-12 at that point. And then things just absolutely took off. The Chargers went 75 yards in only 5 plays in response, all of them runs. Aguilera for 6 and then 22, Carter for 10, Tavecchio for 17, and then Carter for a 20-yard touchdown. Kicked the extra point, Chargers were back up 24-12 at that point. Atlanta responded. 10 plays, 67 yards down the field, Padilla finding wide receiver Victor Romani for a 3-yard touchdown. Then the defense held. Chargers were forced to punt, but the Falcons blocked the punt, leading to Padilla hitting Rafael Rosario for an 11-point touchdown, and then again for a 2-point conversion, giving Atlanta its first lead at 27-24. Chargers went right back. Aguilera found Sebastian Moore, tight end, for a 49-yard gain, then James Carter for a 4-yard touchdown pass, and the Chargers were back on top. Atlanta responded. Rafael Rosario returned the ensuing kickoff all the way to the Chargers' 18. 2 plays later, Fulmer had his second touchdown run from 13 yards out, and Atlanta was back on top. It's 34-31 at this point. Chargers moved down the field. Aguilera hit Sanchez for a 15-yard gain on 3rd and 12. Then, on a later 3rd and 11, finds Sanchez again, this time for 37 yards. But ultimately, they are stopped and they settle for a 30-yard field goal, which ties the score at 34. Atlanta responds again. Padilla finds Richie Igwebuike, 56-yard long bomb, leads to Fulmer's 3rd touchdown run of the game from 10 yards out, and the Falcons have the lead once again. Finally, with 2:44 left in the game, a defense got a stop. Falcons forced the Chargers to punt. But the Falcons themselves then went 3 and out. They punted. The Chargers had time for exactly 2 plays from their own 30-yard line. Were not able to find a final miracle touchdown. So the Falcons ended up winning this game. Again, 41-34 was the final in that one. Michael Fulmer, 125 total yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. Rafael Rosario, 2 receiving touchdowns and a bunch of big plays on special teams. James Carter, just short of 200 yards and 3 scores from him. Absolutely amazing offensive performances all across the board. Some more outrageous stats from this game. To start the second half, there were 8 scores in the first 9 possessions, and the only one that didn't end in a score was a blocked punt. In that time, the Chargers scored 2 touchdowns and a field goal. The Falcons scored 5 consecutive touchdowns on 5 drives to come from behind and win the game. Also, that block was the only punt in 39 minutes of game time, starting with 12 minutes left in the second quarter and going all the way until there were 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter. We only had 1 punt attempt and it was blocked. 39 minutes of playing time. So very exciting, very wild game. Falcons coming away with a memorable victory in this one. Going now to Monday night, had a game between the Buccaneers and Bears, which looked like a blowout at first, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers really taking over. They got a great punt return early in the first quarter, set them up at the Bears' 33-yard line. They took them 9 plays to get into the end zone, converting 3 for 3 on 3rd downs, including a Max Smith 6-yard rushing touchdown for the first touchdown of the game. It was 10-3 in the third quarter when a Gerald Lewis interception gave Tampa Bay another golden opportunity, starting at the Bears' 31. This drive got to the 8-yard line before they kicked a field goal, making it 13-3. It was 16-3 in the fourth quarter when Taphorn broke away for his longest run of the game, 34 yards. That led to a touchdown run by Chris Williams. So with 9.5 minutes to go in the game, it was 23-3, all Buccaneers. But Chicago didn't give up. They converted 2 fourth downs on their ensuing drive. Ultimately gave Gerald Lewis the opportunity to find tight end Nick Evans for a 33-yard touchdown, and the Bears were finally in the end zone, made it 23-10. Tampa Bay went 3 and out, and Lewis went back to work. He found Richard McGuire for a 32-yard gain on 3rd and 9, and then Stanley Segovia broke away for a 44-yard touchdown run. It was 2:16 to go at that point in the game, and it was 23-17. Tampa Bay went 3 and out again, but they had a fantastic punt that pinned the Bears at their own 8-yard line. But Gerald Lewis found wide receiver Adrian Rivera for a 24-yard gain. And then they tacked on 15 more for an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty on the Buccaneers' defense. So just like that, Chicago was all the way to their 47-yard line. But they only had time for one more play, were unable to find the end zone. So the Buccaneers did end up winning this one only by 6 in a game where they had a 20-point lead in the second half. But a win's a win. Max Smith, 86 yards rushing and a touchdown for the Bears, who came up just a little bit short in this one. As for the rest of the Week 11 scoreboard, Green Bay handled New England 27-7. Packers defense picked the Lions off 3 times and sacked him 5 times for a big defensive performance in this one. The Jets got by the Titans 14-3. Jets rushed for 185 yards as a team, including Jan Peters, 18 carries, 100 yards, and a score for him. Miami, another big win, 44-27 over Buffalo. Buffalo stuck with them in the first half, but the Dolphins broke away in the second half. Greg Sellers, ultimately 25 carries, 199 yards rushing on the day, and a pair of touchdowns. And Dolphins defense also sacked Yusei Asensio 8 times in the win. Carolina blew out Kansas City 44-7. Kelvin Dupree, 186 yards and a touchdown on 27 carries, plus 32 yards receiving. And their defense as well balled out, sacking Valenzuela 7 times in this game. Denver beat Baltimore 44-23. Cooper McGuff and Michael Carter combined for 42 carries, 322 rushing yards, and 4 rushing touchdowns. But the big story out of this game, David Chop leaving the game with a neck injury. He is expected to miss basically the remainder of the season, unfortunately. Indianapolis moved into first place in the South with a 23-12 victory over Houston. Mitchell Reynolds had 17 touches for 84 yards and a pair of receiving touchdowns in the win. Dallas beat Philadelphia 45-26 was the final there. Jesse Knoll was 24 of 26 in the game for 266 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. And Vladimir Dawson had 22 carries for the Cowboys, 189 yards rushing, and 3 touchdowns in the win. And then on Sunday night, the Rams all over the Cardinals, 31-3 was the final. Avila was his usual prolific self, throwing 56 passes, completing 35 for 413 yards, and a touchdown with a couple of picks. So, with all of that said, here are my choices for Players of the Week. Fullback Michael Carter for Denver, 177 yards and a trio of touchdowns for him. Also got to shout out James Carter with those 192 yards and 3 touchdowns combined. And Greg Sellers, 199 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns for Miami. And then James Blank had a great day for the Raiders, 167 yards and a touchdown on 9 catches. As for defense, Damon Lucas had 3 sacks and a forced fumble for the Dolphins, and Stephen Kapfhammer for the Panthers had 5 tackles for loss, including 2 sacks. Meanwhile, Robert Smith of Detroit and Bryce Torres of the Cleveland Browns both had a pair of picks and multiple passes defended for both of their teams. So, congratulations to these 8 players for being named my Players of the Week for Week 11. So here is where the injury report is as of this coming week. The new names to notice: Corey Cabrera out for 3 weeks with a bruised thumb for the Bills. David Chop, as we mentioned, is going to be out 6 weeks with that neck injury. That should take him all the way to, he could potentially be back for the last game of the season, but unless the Ravens have a massive turnaround, unlikely to mean much. And it would not surprise me to see the team keep him out for the rest of the year. Pat Flexen of the Bears has a mild ankle sprain. He'll be out next week. And then the Lions lost a pair of offensive linemen with minor injuries. Bianchi and Godo both out next week. And then for the Cardinals, Kendall Dunn and a second injury this year, I believe, for King Pradden. Both of them out for a few weeks for the Cardinals. But coming back, Randy Espino, cornerback for the Commanders, will be coming back, and then Donald Variek, tackle for the LA Rams, are off the injured list, and should be back for their teams next week. So with those results in, here are the standings. We start with the AFC, where the Dolphins are now in a 5-game lead, still 10-0 and undefeated in their division and overall. Browns lead is holding at 3 games over the Steelers and Bengals, with head-to-head wins in both, although obviously another game to be played in both of those series before the season ends. The AFC South is absolutely wide open. A half game separate the leading Colts from the Jaguars and Titans, and the Texans are 5-6 and still very much in the hunt, although that 0-3 division record is going to hurt them when it comes time for tiebreakers. However, right now, the AFC South has the conference's 4, 5, and 6 seeds, with their lowest division leader and 2 wild cards. And then the AFC West, Denver is still on top at 9-2. The Vegas Raiders are actually second at 6-5, despite that division record, that conference record. And then the Chargers still very much in the playoff hunt at 5-5 as well. Over in the AFC, you have the Commanders holding a 4-game lead still over the Cowboys, with the Eagles another game back from that. Bears have stretched their lead in the North all the way to 4 games over the Lions at 4-6. NFC South still very much a 2-team race, with the Panthers at 9-1 and the Falcons all the way to 8-2. So 2 very strong teams there. And then in the West, Rams with a 3.5-game lead over the 5-5 Seahawks. So strong leads there, definitely a top 5 with 4 division leaders, and then the Falcons coming up at 8-2. So this is where the draft order currently stands and what the movement has been. San Francisco still in possession of that number 1 overall pick, and Detroit trailing them at number 2 with the Saints first rounder in their possession. Jets have dropped down to number 4, bumping the Patriots up to number 3 based on the strength of schedule tiebreaker. Baltimore Ravens and Giants swapping spots, and then Detroit and Tampa Bay at 4-6 swapping spots as well. But you can see that huge cluster of 3-win teams all the way from 5 to 10. So a lot of movement still to come as we finish out the season. A lot of football still left to be played. So, speaking of football that's been played, let's take a quick look back in our special segment today at some SimNFL history. What I'm showing here are the charts for the first 3 years in the league, the division winners in green and the wild cards in blue. So for the AFC, you can see we have had 9 different division winners, 3 in the East and 2 everywhere else, and 12 different playoff teams. And the team most likely to join those ranks, right the way things stand now, are the Colts. Obviously, it's a very close 3-team race, honestly 4-team race with the Texans. Right now, the Colts in a great place to make their first playoff appearance ever. And they and the Browns are both chasing their first ever division wins. The South is also looking to have multiple playoff teams for the first time since 2002, and looking to have a pair of wild cards for the first time ever. They never put that many teams in the playoffs at the same time. Denver and the Titans, also noteworthy, looking to extend their streak. They've made the playoffs every season and look to be in a good place to continue that and make it 4 in a row. On the NFC side, we've had 8 different division winners so far and 11 playoff teams. Things are a little more static when we go into 2025, with the surprising revelation that we are on track for 4 repeat division winners, which has never happened. Both conferences usually have 2 to 3 new division winners every time. Right now, with it being Commanders, Packers, Panthers, and Rams leading, that would be a carbon copy of last year. It would also be 3 in a row for the Rams and 4 in a row for the Commanders. Atlanta is in a good place to play spoiler with that, having being only a game back of the Panthers, and I believe having a head-to-head victory, so things are very close there. But even if they don't win the division, Atlanta is in a great position to make their first playoff appearance. And Seattle is also in that mix as well. That would be the first time for both of them, and that would bring the NFC up to 13 teams who have made the playoffs in 4 years. So AFC is at 12 with 1 new one in the running. NFC at 11 historical teams with 2 in the running as well. Also, the NFC South is set to potentially have multiple playoff teams for the first time in their history. They are the only division that so far has only sent their division winner to the playoffs. They've never had a wild card. But again, with Carolina and Atlanta both balling out at the top of that division, in a great place to potentially change that for this year. Short and sweet segment tonight, but just taking a look at a little history and how much things have moved around. It's interesting to look just 3 years ago at, division-winning Bills, division-winning Cardinals, division-winning Buccaneers, and as much as some things stay the same, like teams like Washington and Denver and Tennessee and Los Angeles Rams getting into playoffs, the more they change. We could be looking at only 2 teams out of the East and the NFC making the playoffs for the first time, and 2 teams from the South coming in. We could have 3 teams from the AFC South. The 2 South divisions, much maligned, could have 5 playoff teams this year. So as much as it may seem sometimes like it's always the same few teams over and over, there actually is a fair amount of turnover going on this year as well as every year. So we get to look ahead now to week 12 of the SimNFL season, which is Simsgiving. So happy holidays to all who celebrate. So we will be having a bonus Thursday game this week. As is tradition, both Dallas and Detroit will be hosting games. So on Thursday we get Pittsburgh at Dallas, and then we follow that up with Buffalo at Detroit for a Thursday doubleheader. Moving into the Sunday games, we have a great division matchup with the Giants facing off against Washington, again over in that NFC East. And then in the afternoon, a fantastic lineup with Carolina going to Green Bay, 2 division leaders going head-to-head in what could be a crucial tiebreaker game. 9-1 Carolina, 8-2 Green Bay. You don't want to miss this game. And then that'll be followed up by the Cincinnati Bengals going to Denver to play the 9-2 Broncos. On Sunday night, we go out west for a matchup between Kansas City and the LA Chargers. And then we finish everything off on Monday night with the Seattle Seahawks, 5-5 and playoff hopefuls, going up against the juggernaut Dolphins, 10-0 in Miami. Seattle looking to play spoiler for the first time, or even have a 1-score game, which the Dolphins haven't had yet. But yeah, a lot of great football ahead in Week 12. Hope you stick around and join us for that. So that is everything I have for this edition of the SimNFL show. Very excited for the upcoming week. And as I say to all users in all of our sims, good luck and have fun.